What's a disaster that is very likely to happen, but not many people know about? A major fissure eruption in southeast Iceland. Since the Norse settlement there have been two: the Elja eruption C939C and the Lakagígar eruption of 1783-4. Although Elja was larger, the massive Laki eruption is better documented. It created local devastation, crop failures, poisoned grazing animals and people. Half of the farm animals and 20% of Icelanders died. Things got so bad that the Danish government considered evacuating the entire island. We now know the Laki plume of sulfur dioxide spread across the northern hemisphere. In the UK, it killed tens of thousands of people. Elsewhere there were crop failures and poisonous fogs. The climate went berserk with a series of bitterly cold winters that caused the Mississippi to freeze in New Orleans and ice flows in the Gulf of Mexico. Rains in the Nile Valley and the monsoon in India and China failed, leading to famine. Total death toll in the 18th century anything up to 1 million people. The ocean fisheries will collapse. Yesterday's trash species are today's featured catch of the day, will be tomorrow's memory. Harvesting is occurring at unsustainable rates, while environmental degradation is steadily reducing habitat and forage ranges. For many people in developed nations, fish is one option, among many, for protein. For most people in developing nations, it is the cheapest and most accessible option. When it's gone, there will be catastrophic socio-political and economic upheavals. The commercial fishing industry is also the #1 source of plastics in the ocean. The amount of methane and other gases that are bubbling up from the Arctic is a lot more than previously thought. Greenhouse gases on steroids. Yeah, but it's even worse because it's a climatic feedback system. The more the temp rises, the more methane is released by melting. This increases the temp, which releases more methane, etc. The Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of the Pacific Northwest will rip again. Depending on the specifics, it will be a really bad day, or an utterly catastrophic day, for the Pacific Northwest. That will be from the earthquake itself and from the subsequent tsunami. It rips every several hundred years, and the last one was in the year 1700. I always read these things, like the caldera in Yellowstone, and then this zone JD, I'm like, oh, I need to visit before it's gone, or happens. But then I'm like, oh, but what if it happens the day I'm there? Ha, I get it. I don't live in the Pacific Northwest, but my daughter goes to school there, and studies geology and subduction zones, and recently told us she and some friends would be climbing to the rim of Mt. St. Helens. My wife got all worried and said, what if it erupts again while she's up there? We have a ton of volcanologists around the Ring of Fire, and our fair share in Washington. They're very good at accessing risk of eruption. St. Helens was known to be about to erupt for at least a couple of weeks prior to the 1980 event, and scientists have much better, more sensitive equipment now. Which of course leads to all sorts of news stories about quake clusters on one of the 5 active volcanoes in the state, which always have a quote near the end by one of the scientists telling us it's normal and nothing to be concerned about. Plus, a lot was learned from the 1980 eruption about safe practices, and the collective memory in the area would likely lead to way more caution if the experts felt there was a concern. Hell, I was born in 1986 and I know so much about it just from news sources and old-timers talking about it. So ultimately, if the mountain is open, she's safe. Plus, it's gorgeous. And when else can you get that close to a crater made only 44 years ago? Pretty cool she gets that opportunity. A powerful earthquake along the New Madrid Fault in Missouri. This was my first thought as well. I only learned about it, growing up in Illinois, because I took a geology course in college. Midwest isn't super known for earthquakes, and if it happens it'll probably be exceedingly bad. Not like they build houses to be quake resistant usually. Dumb question, not a scientist, but if this is ultimately caused by plates moving deep inside the earth, would fracking help release pent-up pressure, so it would be slightly less catastrophic when the big one does happen? It's not a dumb question. As a geologist, I can explain that the New Madrid seismic zone is unique because it is not related to tectonic plate movement like other earthquake zones, such as those in California, Alaska, Japan, and others. These earthquakes occur along tectonic plate boundaries, which are the primary sites of seismic activity. In contrast, the New Madrid zone is classified as an intraplate seismic zone, meaning it is not near any plate boundary. The last significant activity in the New Madrid zone occurred in 1811 to 1812, before modern geological science was established. Since then, there have been no major earthquakes, making it difficult to analyze the area due to a lack of historical data. In comparison, other seismic zones experience regular, smaller earthquakes that provide crucial data for analysis. For instance, California experiences numerous minor quakes daily, while New Madrid has a dearth of data. The geological mystery of New Madrid is compounded by the challenges of conducting seismic surveys in urban areas, where noise and traffic can interfere with data collection. Ideally, we would gather more seismic data, but the urban setting complicates this process. Hawaii serves as another example of an intraplate zone, located over a hot spot where magma has created islands as the Pacific plate moves over it. Unlike New Madrid, Hawaii has active volcanism due to its unique geological setting. Regarding fracking, it is often misunderstood. Fracking is used to extract oil from rocks that lack natural permeability. While it can relieve pressure locally, it does not create extensive networks of fractures. Instead, it alters the rock only a few hundred feet from the wellbore. The concern arises when fracking occurs near a fault network. The injected fluid can increase pressure on the fault, potentially causing it to slip. In summary, the New Madrid seismic zone is distinct from other earthquake-prone areas due to its intraplate nature and the historical lack of significant seismic activity, making it a challenging subject for geological study. Understanding the dynamics of this zone is crucial, especially as we consider the implications of human activities like fracking on seismic stability. Most large-scaling farming practices are non-renewable. Like we need to continuously find new ways to farm things, or we won't be able to grow food anywhere near the scale we do now. People don't really know, but coffee beans are on their way to extinction. Out of everything in this thread, this scares me the most. Because for most of the other ones, I'll just die. But for this one, I'll suffer. There's significant peril to coffee right now because the last 300 years of coffee, its effective commercial life, hasn't encouraged biological diversity. Coffee began in Africa, and the majority of its commercial lineage can be traced to just a couple of plants brought by colonial powers to other continents. A couple years ago, this finally got to be taken seriously, and World Coffee Research is the go-to for research in developing coffees that can adapt to a warmer climate while keeping positive cup attributes. Antibiotic resistance and the emergence not only of superbugs, but pen drug-resistant bacteria. Reports say that by year 2050, deaths by infections caused by superbugs will be one of the leading causes of mortality. Regrettably, bacteria are evolving faster than we can develop new antibiotics, and the indiscriminate use of antibiotics in the dairy and poultry industries is only worsening the situation. Perhaps not as big as a natural disaster, but horrifying nonetheless. It's not that the bacteria are evolving faster than we can develop new antibiotics, but faster than we are developing new antibiotics. We have let them run this race while we stand on the sideline. There's literally thousands of new drugs being tested for oncology, versus a few dozen new antibiotic drugs in the pipeline. And of those, maybe 1 in 4 are a new class or mode of action. The newest class of antibiotics in our arsenal is already 40 years old this year. Drug companies just don't fund a lot of research in this area anymore. Microplastics. It's being found everywhere in our environment, and is already being discovered in the blood tissues of wildlife and humans. Scientists don't even know what the long-term health effects of this will be. I am betting on it being nothing good. An often overlooked disaster is the rapid decline of insects, especially pollinators such as bees. Although bee extinction is not immediate, it could have a significant impact on global food resources, ecosystems, and biodiversity. Without these pollinators, many crops would fail, leading to food shortages and economic disruption. But this important issue has not received enough attention. No, and I live with the infuriating evidence up close and personal every damn day, and it is unfucking real. I belong to a 126-home HOA in Houston, Texas, in the Galleria area. One of the wealthiest, so it would logically follow one of the most educated areas in this god-forsaken shithole if a city. I bought my house 3 years ago and quickly realized I had made a huge error. I am the only owner out of 126 who has even the most basic knowledge of xeriscaping, native plant gardening, The myth that is mosquito fogging and weed killer, and then just continue in that thread. I would venture that at minimum 90% of this community has at least a bachelor's degree. Many I know have professional degrees. I have served in the board since I bought my home. The first year there were 3 Gen Zers and 2 complacent boomers. I read the room and motioned to end the mosquito fogging insanity they had been spending, burning thousands a year since 1978. I got approval to plant a beautiful native plant garden and created an adorable frog pond, and that spring the toads partied all night. Anoles were literally everywhere. I swear the dragonflies and bees thought I was a Disney princess, and even the wasps loved me. 3 years of taking care of these natural predators and using BTI in my pond, and all around we barely had mosquitoes. In Houston. Fast forward to today, and I am consulting with an attorney and on the brink of suing the current board. All boomers except for me, and real nasty ones too, accused me of being a public nuisance for breeding mosquitoes in my frog pond. Also for causing a noise disturbance because the toads calling were disrupting their sleep. Immediately restarted mosquito fogging and killed my goldfish in my patio container pond. Hardly a bee this past year. 1 or 2 sick honeybees. I had a couple of butterflies stop by and nope the hell out. In case you don't know what that shit does, it coats everything in a fine white powder that's very hard to wash off the plants. I tried to stand outside on the nights they came and physically prevent them from entering the perimeter of my house. The board started having them come off schedule. That white powder contaminated the frog pond and killed more than 1 batch of tadpoles. Once it gets into the bog, you just can't get it out. It also kills the hardy water lilies, just causes the pads to rot. This month they decided fuck the previous approval. Everything had to go, and they hired 3 guys who showed up one day and removed everything and filled in the pond. It's as fucking dirt hole, and I'm done with this pieces of trash thinking they are living humans. I want their fucking houses. Fuck HOAs. It was tragic, and I have pretty much had a breakdown of sorts. Edit to say I have been known to post diatribes on Reddit over the last year as this catastrophe has unfolded. If you feel like you've heard this story before, yep, you probably have. Apocalypse. In 2038, the old Unix Linux systems that have physical 32-bit time registers are going to run out of time, kind of like the Y2K bug, but this is a physical memory issue. Hopefully all the old systems will be swapped out by then. As far as global pandemics go, COVID was not nearly as devastating as it could have been. Keep all aspects of COVID the same, but increase its lethality. For context, the bubonic plague killed 80% of those who became infected. If something with the same transmittability and lethality as the bubonic plague manifested today, especially now that we've seen how people respond to pandemic controls, we'd be finished. I attended a lecture from an epidemiologist who was a consultant for the movie Contagion. When somebody asked a question that referenced Contagion as a worst-case scenario, he laughed and said that Contagion is nowhere near a worst-case scenario. We're running out of the mineral that curling stones are made out of. Eventually we won't be able to enjoy curling at all in its current form. The Winter Olympics will never be the same. I've worked with water for the majority of my professional career. If the average American had any idea how uneducated and stupid your average water operator is, the disaster is already happening. Water and wastewater districts all over the country are lying about what's in the products coming out of their plants. Not to mention how old the pipes are in most cities. The biggest issues are 3 things. 1. People using well water in metal-polluted places without a metal treatment process. And this is essentially anywhere that's experienced metal extraction and smelting. 2. Places using well water around areas with fossil fuel extraction and no oxidant removal process. 3. Industrial sites who cheat the sampling process and discharge their nasties on non-sampling days. AMOC, Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, Slowing Halting. Melting of northern latitude glaciers are effectively hosing the North Atlantic Ocean with cold, fresh water, disrupting the global conveyor belt in the ocean which redistributes heat across the planet. If AMOC slows enough, which we're looking at happening within decades, not centuries, global weather patterns will shift entirely. Western Europe will freeze, the southern hemisphere will retain much more heat, sea level rise will increase significantly, the oceans will lose some of their capacity to sequester CO2, which in turn increases atmospheric warming, melting of glaciers. etc., generating a positive feedback loop. We really don't want AMOC to stop, lol. There is going to be a serious disaster when you get very high humidity and temperature. It's called a wet bulb event. Death rates in that city will be very high, and if it hits Mecca during the Hajj, the death rate will be astronomical. Was reading Ministry of the Future, and the book opens with one fucking terrifying. That chapter fucked me up. I was a little disappointed that the rest of the book wasn't so exciting by comparison, but still enjoyed it quite a bit. But that chapter literally gave me nightmares. I have never done well in high heat, humidity, and prefer colder climates, and this book scared me into never even considering living in a hotter, humid climate. Solar flare-induced blackout. A massive solar storm could fry electrical grids and satellites, causing a global communications and power blackout. We've had some pretty powerful solar flares recently. Northern lights were visible in the Caribbean just a couple weeks ago. Deepfakes. You may think you can tell the difference now, but as it gets more sophisticated, you're not going to be any better at identifying it than your grandparents. What will the world be like when we can't trust anything we see or hear? What will happen when anyone can make a video of you saying anything they want or deny the terrible things they are doing by simply saying it is a seek fake of them? I sincerely believe the consequences will be the end of humanity as we know it. Think about everything, from court cases to personal relationships to international relations. I've been saying it for years, but the broad implications of this are going to be truly insane. Most people don't realize how fragile the US, and I'm guessing other countries, food systems are. There are very few smaller family farms. Everything is corporate owned. If anything disrupts the distribution channels, a trucker strike, warehouse house strike, most supermarkets will be put of fresh food in 3 to 4 days. And when that starts, the panic of buying canned food will clear the rest. Not a doomsday guy, but you can fit a lot of staple foods under your bed if you don't have pantry space. China invading Taiwan and a major semiconductor shortage would pretty much bring so many things to a halt. If China moves to actively invade, then the US would definitely interfere. They're already doing this weird dance with each other, just waiting it out. However, if the US is interfering with an invasion, who knows which other country would decide to join? It's a domino effect at that point. We will have quantum computers. When that happens, there's going to be massive implications given that it cracks modern encryption. Even if we move to encryption that isn't crackable by quantum computers, all the data that existed prior will be able to be unencrypted, so all the current data that governments and bad actors have squirreled away and stored, waiting to be able to mass decrypt it, will be available to them. Quantum computers are the first thing ever where I just don't understand what they are. Every time I find an explanation of one, it's so dumbed down it's like they're explaining advanced thermodynamics to a baby. Every time it's not dumbed down, it's like a 4-dimensional alien is talking about something an angel taught him. Think about it like this. Regular computers can say yes or no, ones and zeros, but quantum computers can say maybe in interesting ways. That is, they can be in states between yes and no. This is called superposition. Also, they can produce correlations between these yes and no answers. Imagine you have a coin on Earth and your friend has one on Mars, and you're guaranteed that both of you will get the same result when you flip. This is called entanglement. Quantum computers use superposition and entanglement to try to solve problems faster than on regular computers. One example is factoring, breaking up a number into its prime factors, like 15-5 times 3. This can be done really fast on a quantum computer, but we don't know how to do it quickly on a regular one. This problem also happens to be at the core of a lot of cryptography, which is why OP is worried. What do quantum computers not do? Well, first, they don't exist, lol. We are super far away from building useful quantum computers, and people are working on implementing quantum secure cryptography, which for my money should come into place before quantum computers. Also, they don't do things like try every solution in parallel. There's much more nuance than that. Even if you try every solution using superposition, it's often very hard to detect which solution actually ended up working. Bottom line, temper the hype with quantum computing, haha. Hope this helps. It's been written about, but no one I speak to, even in my hospital, realize it. A very worrying doctor shortage. Not only were there simply more boomers, but they're also aging out and will now need more intensive medical care. Not surprising considering the cost of medical school being a good reason. What's a disaster that is very likely to happen but not many people know about? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.